Hey, folks. I'm back. Free Preacher Daniel, and I tell you, I got something I got to tell you today. This will be the last show I'll ever do in the year 2022. That's because this is January 31st. This is the New Year's Eve show, Bubba. And I'm back with the same. I got the same message over and over. Hey, I got a new scroll for that though. The threefold key to the kingdom. Be born again, hear his sayings, and do them. Let me get my little stick out here. I like that. The threefold key to the kingdom is be born again, hear his sayings, and do them. I'm going to keep hammering on that all through 2023. And folks, I've apologized for how rinky dink the show is, and I'm going to apologize again for it. I know it ain't much production wise, it ain't much for technology, it ain't much for talent. It's only me. I mean, I ain't nobody. But the message is so incredibly good. Jesus was right. Jesus was right on. The words of Jesus in your Bible are correct. He told you the right stuff, and it's been hid for 2,000 years. For 2,000 years, we've been having them preachers, oh yeah, this, that, the other thing, because it was never time for the real truth of Christ. And I come back to it again, Mark 13:10. He said the gospel must first be published among all nations. Folks, it's 2022 right now. Just in the last 3 or 4 years, the gospel has been published among all nations. That John 16:4, that those things he told us back then, he said it. I'm not telling you this stuff for right now. I know you're not going to get it right now. He said, but these things that I have told you, when the time shall come, ye may remember that I told you of them. He said the time for sure is going to come, and that time has come. That time is right now. It's time to start remembering them things he said. And this is the other one I keep hammering on over and over, and I'm back to it too. Jesus was right on the money. The reason I come back to that, I'm not greedy. I don't want your money. I'm a free preacher. But that's the one that Christianity is so weak on right now today. They are weak on this part right here. This is the part they just won't tell you the truth of what Jesus said. He told you to lay up treasure for yourself in heaven. He told you to do that in the Sermon on the Mount. And then there's only one way that he ever gave where you can lay treasure up in heaven, and this is that way. Give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven. That's the only way. There is no other way than that. You got to give to the poor. You got to feed the hungry. You got to house the homeless. You got to quench the thirsty. All them things he said, the different variations of giving to the poor. But that's the only way that you get that treasure in heaven. And I want to pound on that today because, of course, I repeat myself a lot. I know that. But I just realized there's a third group that really gets helped when you do it his way. When you do it the way Jesus told you, when you give your money the way he told you to give it, it helps the poor. Poor people would be immensely benefited in this world when believers start giving their tithe to the poor people, when they start giving their love offerings to the poor people, instead of building a mega church, instead of building that great big new steeple out there and the rec center and all the bookstore and all that stuff, all the money your church spends for the mansion for that preacher and stuff like that. That could be feeding them hungry. That could be housing them homeless. That could be doing for the poor. That's obvious, and I've talked about it a lot of times. And the other one that is incredibly important is for the believer, for the tither. When you give your money to the church, there's no treasure in heaven for that. You're not building your house in heaven on that. You're not building your mansion up there when you give it like that. When you give it to your church, you get the approval of your church. They think you're a cool guy for giving it that money to them. But you don't get anything after you die in this world. To have money waiting for you when you die, you got to do it the way Jesus told you to do it. You got to hear his sayings and do them, and that's how you build your house on a rock. His saying is, give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven. That's how you build the house on the rock. You actually give it to the poor. You do like what he told you. It helps the believers immensely. Because when you show up at the kingdom as an unprofitable servant, because you gave all the money to your church and you didn't give any of it to the bum out there on the street. You didn't give it to Lazarus. Lazarus and the rich man, you ever look at that one? The rich man went to hell for no other reason he wouldn't help Lazarus. Lazarus went to heaven for no reason whatsoever except he was just helpless and hopeless and naked and laying out there in the street. And all he wanted was the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. Just let me dig through your trash. Nope. Rich man locked up. He put a padlock on his dumpster, man. No way I ain't letting you dig. Because they make a big mess when you let them dig through your trash. I know that. It's inconvenient. Sure it is. But showing up after you die and going to hell, that's inconvenient too. But also, you might show up in heaven. If you're born again, you get to go to heaven. But you show up as an unprofitable servant, you get everlasting punishment in the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's incredibly inconvenient too. But there's a third group that I've been forgetting about, and I want to bring that group in today. Since I'm pounding on that same thing again, we know that it helps the poor people. The poor people will be benefited when you give them the money. And you shall have treasure in heaven. You will be benefited when you give it the way Jesus said, because you will have treasure in heaven. And you're going to want to have that. It's not just the treasure, you get the inheritance up there. You get the ruler over many things up there. You get to enter into the joy of your Lord when you get up there with having done it the way he said. That's so terrific for the believer, for the tither. Those two groups of people really get helped by that. But there's a third group that I just realized this last week or so. I was talking to somebody. He was telling me how his dad was not born again. He didn't believe in Jesus. He thought it was a bunch of hocus pocus, phony baloney and stuff like that. And I realized non-believers look at Christianity and they judge Christ by that. They see the phoniness, they see the hypocrisy, they see the greed, and they think that Jesus is phony. They think that Jesus is a hypocrite and that Jesus is greedy. He's not. Man, he hated hypocrisy. He said, don't be like the hypocrites that love to pray standing in church. Hey, does your preacher pray standing in church? Does he ever stand up there and say, let us pray? Jesus hated that, man. That's hypocritical. He said, go off alone and pray to the Father in secret. That's what he said. It's the unbelievers that are missing the chance to get saved. That's the other huge group on earth that is hurt by Christianity taking that money for themselves, passing that collection plate for themselves. Jesus never passed a collection plate. He never did. He never authorized anybody else to pass a collection plate. None of the apostles did. None of the early disciples did. Nowhere in the New Testament do you see anybody passing a collection plate. They pooled their money together so they could go out and preach for free. I'm a free preacher because that's the way it was at the beginning, and that's the way it's going to be at the end. All of the paid preachers are going to be obsolete here pretty soon when the truth of Jesus starts getting out. So when you go with Jesus being right on the money and give it to the poor, they get helped. The poor get helped. And you will get immensely helped because you'll get treasure in heaven from it. But the unbelievers, my goodness, they're missing the chance to be born again because of your church wanting that money, greedy for that money on themselves. And that's why I keep hammering on it, and I'm going to keep hammering on it. Now, you know, I got my book here. This is up on Amazon, The Jesus Precepts, Daniel Putnam Green. You can also look under D.P. Green. I think that's how they list it. The Jesus Precepts by D.P. Green. I'm going to read a little bit from that because I've got chapters on all of this stuff here. And I got a chapter on this subject right here, Bubba. Let's start with Acts 20:35 because I know your preacher pulls this one out all the time when he's trying to get you to put money in that bucket. It is more blessed to give than to receive. That's red letters. That's Jesus talking. But it's Paul quoting him there in Acts. It wasn't Jesus in the flesh. He was already gone by then. But it's, Paul quoting him. It is more blessed to give than to receive. So they want you to put that money in the bucket, and that's blessed. But the very same verse, a little bit earlier in that verse, he says, how they labor in helping the weak. how they labor to help the weak. It is more blessed to give than to receive. They labor in helping the weak. It is more blessed to give than to receive. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about giving it to your church. He was talking about giving it to the weak. And then you look down here. Okay, we're going to go down here. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord has made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? See, you get to be ruler up over yonder. It's not just having the wealth, it's get to be ruler over there. Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Oh man, if it's the second coming right now, Bubba, you're going to want to be doing what Jesus said. I guarantee that. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. You get to be ruler over that stuff of Jesus up over yonder, man, and that is well worth it. That's Matthew 24, 45, and 47. And the other thing I want to tell you about that key to the kingdom there, the threefold key, because that's the key to get past the straight gate, for one thing. That's also the key for your mansion. When you get up to heaven, you go to the front door of your mansion. That's the key that's going to open that door. But it's also the key to be set up for the second coming. If Armageddon shows up while you're still here, you might die before the second coming. You might die before Armageddon. Who knows? But if you're here when it happens, that's the way to be prepared for it right there. Be born again, hear his sayings, and do them, and then you'll be prepared. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Matthew 5:42. Man, don't turn away like that. If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. When he says come and follow me, that's come and follow my instructions. That's what that is. That's that one again. Give to the poor and you'll have treasure in heaven. And that's how you get to be perfect. And here in Luke 16:9, and I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when ye fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitations. Those poor people you help in this world, the Lazarus, the poverty-stricken, them bums out on the street, they can receive you into eternal homes. Those are the people that's got your help up over yonder, man. And then here's like a karma kind of thing. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. That's when you give it the way he said. That ain't giving it to your church. Take heed that ye do not your alms before men to be seen of them. Otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. That's Matthew 6:1. Don't make a show out of it. When you're giving your money to them bums, don't make a show out of it. Do it in secret. Oh, here's one too. Luke 6:30. Give to every man that asketh of thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. That's somebody that steals from you. If they steal, some bum comes by and steals from you, don't try to get it back. Don't try to get that back from that bum. No, sir, man. I got a song for you here before I go, man. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. 2023 is going to be a breakout year, man. We're going to bust out everywhere. This message is going to bust out everywhere because it's not going to be just dinky little Danny Green doing it much longer. There's going to be people picking this ball up and run for it. And I'm putting a call out to all my old brothers, putting a call out to all my friends. I'm sending a message through the ether. Meet me in the comfort of the promised land. Meet me in the comfort of the promised land. Folks, I wrote that song, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. You couldn't even put a call out over the ether. Now you can. The internet. You put a call out over the ether. I'm putting the call out over this internet to everybody that wants to hear it. Listen to the Lord. Be born again. Hear his sayings and do them. I love you, man.